You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. We have got plenty to dive into this evening, and you'll need to dive because the entire Iranian Navy is at the bottom of the ocean. The entire Iranian Navy. I once again, after all of al-Khamenei's now lying in dirt and rubble, al-Khamenei's promises, the U.S. Navy was going to be at the bottom of the ocean. In fact, it was our boats of the great U.S. Navy, our aircraft carriers that were going to be destroyed, all of these U.S. sailors bobbing in the water helplessly. Nope, absolutely not. Here we are, after just 3 days of the Second Gulf War. Yet another Iranian Navy has been sent to the bottom of the deep blue Persian Gulf. The Iranian government has announced they've closed the Strait of Hormuz, but with what? With what? What are they closing it with? A large chain? Are they trying to do the Benedict Arnold plan up in the Hudson? A little Revolutionary War trivia for those of you out there. But alas, you can see from on the live stream the beautiful explosive footage of the Iranian drone carrier. So we have aircraft carriers, and they essentially said, what if I went to the toy store and I bought a little teeny tiny drone carrier style ship? So it's like an aircraft carrier, but smaller. Instead of running on incredible nuclear generators or even an umpteen ton of diesel, essentially this ran on like a wind-up mechanism and some unleaded gas down from your local speedway. And the Iranian drone carrier, the pride of the Iranian Navy, has also joined the rest of the Iranian fleet now at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. Now, CNN has some other information about satellite images. This is breaking just before the show. We'll air this.
We're seeing now some new images coming in of current destruction from the joint U.S. and Israeli strikes across Iran. We're also getting in some new satellite images. I mean, you take a look at what you're seeing here. This is dark plumes of smoke rising from multiple burning Iranian ships.
Now, for those of you who are listening on the radio side of things, imagine a beautiful deep blue sea. And then imagine a bunch of little teeny gray battleships. And then instead of red pegs, where Pete Hegseth has hit the Iranian Navy, black plumes of smoke, announcing loud and clear two things. Number one, the Iranian Navy sucks. And number two, the Chinese and Russian promises of anti-ship missiles and anti-air missiles and anti-US missiles in general, they're garbage. They are absolute garbage.
Military harbor. President Trump has spoken about this. He said today that one of the U.S. goals in these operations, such that have been vaguely defined, is to annihilate Iran's Navy. He talked yesterday about...
I like that, how that vaguely defined. No. Not vague to say annihilate Iran's Navy. That means I'm going to take their boats, I'm going to poke holes in the bottom, and then they're going to wish they had listened to old Donald Trump just a minute, because I'm going to bomb the out of them. Because that's what Trump has promised since 2016. I will remind you that in 2016, Donald Trump got in front of God and everybody. And he said, I'm tired of them killing American citizens. I'm tired of the radical Islamists in the region thinking they can do whatever it is that they want at the expense of military personnel, at the expense of our civilians in the region, at the expense of trading through the Strait of Hormuz, Gulf of Aden, Persian Gulf. I'm tired of it. And this is what we are seeing now here in effect. Now, this also comes with one of the other major accomplishments of this decade: complete and total air superiority by the United States and by Israel over all of Iran. I want to make that clear again. Over all of Iran, complete and total air superiority. Here's the Joint Chief of Staff Chairman, General Dan Kane, Raisin Kane himself, talking about the achievement of this air superiority earlier today.
The combined impact of these strikes, swift, precise, and overwhelming, has resulted in the establishment of local air superiority. This air superiority will not only enhance the protection of our forces, but also allow them to continue the work over Iran.
Now, if you don't know why this is impressive, you're like, well, I mean, come on, it's Iran. I mean, what exactly did they have to offer? You were told, not just by foreign diplomats, not just by the foreign ministries, not just by pundits over on the far left, but there were isolationist pundits here in the United States that told you that the oh so fabled, beautiful, incredible, amazing Russian 9K-333, the Verba, that this man-portable air defense system was going to ruin the United States. You were told that the Russian S-300 PMU-2 long-range surface-to-air missile system would stop us. It would thwart us in Venezuela, and it would thwart us in Iran. You were told that the Chinese HQ-9B long-range surface-to-air missile system, that these SAMs would be knocking down medium and high-altitude aircraft left, right, and center. It was supposed to be the Raptor Eater, as in the F-22 Raptor Eater. And of course, the Chinese HQ-16 and HQ-17AE, which is supposed to be their medium-altitude threat destruction system. These are the things that are supposed to take out my beloved MQ-9 Reaper drone and the MQ-1C, the Gray Eagle. That's what replaced the Predator drone of earlier years. And do you know what? Do you know how many they've shot down so far? 0. They have shot down 0. The only jets shot down so far, 3 F-15Es shot down by our allies in Kuwait, who got a little too excited, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We'll get to that. As of right now, we have complete air superiority, which means that we get at the very least some cool footage. So this is just for me to you. I can't help but shove this footage in. Here's an MQ-9 Reaper loitering. He's just hanging out. Nothing is shooting that down. Now, I've said this before, but it bears saying again. You know, I gave a little of this particular help over on the social media side, but I want you to know the difference between drones. If her tail fins in the back are up like a V, it's an MQ-9 Reaper. Got a longer wingspan there, flown by nervous airmen in this operation. There are no Marines, Navy men, and sailors and working with their particular aircraft, and there are no Army officers flying the Reapers in this operation, just airmen and some slightly buzzed contractors. However, if her tail fins point down, like an A without the line in the middle, that's an MQ-1C Gray Eagle. That's flown by a very annoyed, often Army 15 Whiskey, and also often slightly buzzed air, contractors. But before I get myself in trouble, really cool to see the MQ-9 just doing her thing. Now, there's lots of footage that we could show you. Oh, heck, you talked me into it. Of the MQ-9 throwing lots of really delightful rocketeering goodness at the rest of the Iranian ground forces. And these particular explosions from all over the Middle East as these particular craft continue to eliminate those trying to get these ballistic missiles off the ground as quickly as they can, not remotely quick enough, not even slightly quick enough. Again, we've shown you, of course, the footage from the Israeli Defense Force crews as well that are able to hit those attempting to get the ballistic missiles off of the low boy before they can even get the hydraulic arms to raise the missile. Many of these craft are sent sky high and their crews with them. So complete air superiority. Now, there are some missiles that are flying into the air. There's footage we'll show maybe a little bit later of IDF fighter pilots attempting to evade Tehran surface-to-air missiles and doing so successfully. Really, really cool stuff. But alas, I got to keep moving here. Of the total Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and Iranian political officials that have been killed, these include Ayatollah al-Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Iranian Islamic Republic since 1989. Of course, he was killed in the airstrike on his compound. Now, by the way, not only him, but his daughter, his son-in-law, and his grandson reported killed in the exact same strike. So his line prepared to take the Ayatollah crown from him, gone. Now, this is not a confirmed death yet, but the next Ayatollah, Ali, and I don't mean Ababwa of Agrabah, that would be Aladdin. The next Ali is also missing at the moment. No one knows where he is. Supposedly, he's leading Iran, but there are conflicting reports right now suggesting that the next Ayatollah that they pushed in as kind of a temporary has already been killed. So, Answer there, the Daily Double. You know, nothing like a little back-to-back goodness. Radio crew, we got to send you off to commercial. We're going to get through more of this news on the live stream side where there are no commercials. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. If you've never joined us before, because we're trying to do this on radio and TV while we do this as well, we send the radio crew off for commercial, and then we do a little extra show for you here until we bring them back in. So, as I was saying, Mohammad Pakpour, the commander-in-chief of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, dead. Mousavi, the chief of staff of the Iranian armed forces, dead. Amir Nazirzadeh, the minister of defense and the former Air Force commander, deputy chief of staff, also dead. Mahmoud Shirazi, head of the military bureau of office of the supreme leader, dead. Another Ali Shamkhani, the senior advisor to the supreme leader, dead. My personal favorite, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, the former Iranian president and one of the worst human beings on earth, also dead. On and on and on. The commander of the IRGC Aerospace Force, that would be Ballistic Missile Man, the police intelligence chief, who was involved with sending countless, tens of thousands of civilians to their deaths, before we even get to the protests which resulted in the death of around 35 to 40,000 Iranian civilians. The deputy intelligence minister, the head of the espionage division, who was really bad at his job. But perhaps the worst of all at his job, the Intelligence Ministry Internal Security Deputy, Sayed Yahya Hosseini Panjaki. This guy was the one who was in charge of organizing the meetings and the contingency plans. So the United States and Israel, and I'm not joking, I want to make this clear. The United States, Israel, and Paraguay, the nation of Paraguay, had completely broken the internal communications of the country and had information about where senior Iranian officials were going to be before some of the senior Iranian officials. You would think they would use Microsoft Teams. You would think they would use Zoom. But no, that is haram. They must meet in person and then be met with either a pager, a JDAM, an AGM, a Tomahawk, the various kinds of things. Now, as of right now, there are continuing sorties in other countries that are joining in. So first of all, I thought you'd enjoy seeing the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, the USS Frank E. Peterson Jr., the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer. It's moniker DDG-121, firing a beautiful Tomahawk from her forward and aft vertical launching systems. This one's just for you folks. Absolutely beautiful. Nothing like a good middle finger out of the overcruise. Now, I did mention other countries joining in here. The Saudi Arabian kingdom, and then, of course, the United Arab Emirates, who has taken quite a couple of hits from Iran, are both preparing to join missions with the United States and Israel against Iran. Guys, that's the Abrahamic Accord set in motion. That is unbelievable until you realize that the Saudi Arabians have already released intelligence showing that the Iranians, which have claimed, we're totally just aiming for U.S. bases, which is what the Washington Post had erroneously ordered. The Saudis released intelligence showing, hey, guess what? We're just throwing missiles out anywhere we can at any time. And yeah, we're probably going to hit some of the other Muslim countries in the region, including residential areas. Who cares? Now, the Iranian government has done two things. First of all, the Iranian government has now admitted that the school that a bunch of nutcases around the rest of the world are claiming that the U.S. and Israel have destroyed, the Iranian government, through state-run TV, have now admitted that it was their own missile that misfired. And just as a bearded, handsome man on this screen told you, didn't engage its secondary rockets and fell on an Iranian school, killing a bunch of little girls in that building. Yep, Iranians did that. And number two, they have also now admitted that they have fired a bunch of weapons at others around the rest of the Middle East. I mean, when you have one of your foreign ministers get up in front of the world and announce, oh yeah, by the way, we kind of threw all of these missiles at everybody. Yikes.
So we started by attacking their military bases. They have, evacuated the military bases, and they have gone to the hotels, and they have, made human shields for themselves. This is not actually an act of, war. So we are trying actually to target only military personnel and the facilities who are helping the United States,
I mean, admitting it, we're bringing the radio crew back. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
Bum, 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 Iran. Bum, 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 Iran.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. So when your Iranian foreign minister gets up in front of the world and admits you're firing at hotels, you are firing at the rest of the Muslim countries in the region. It turns out some of the bigger Muslim countries aren't going to enjoy that at all. In fact, Saudi Arabia issued a warning and said, hey, if you attack our oil refineries, we're going to join the Israelis and the United States, and we're going to flatten you. This is an announcement made by the Saudi Arabian government, foreign ministry, and their military. A trilateral announcement from that country is rather rare. And wouldn't you know, just a few hours later, a Saudi refinery had to close, people running away in emergency as an Iranian suicide drone started trying to breach the defenses and hit the oil refineries of Saudi Arabia. Stupid. Absolute foolishness. Now, I see a comment, in fact, a super chat from Kevin Stankiewicz asking about Turkey, the second largest military in NATO, neighbor of Iran. Is it going to help the United States in Iran? No, absolutely not. In fact, the Turkish government has already made the decision to come out and say that they are a neighbor of Iran. The dictator of Turkey has come out and announced that, well, Iran's kind of a neighbor and, kind of a pal. And so what we really need is a ceasefire, which is, again, a very bizarre thing to come out before the public and say. Now, he didn't come out and say that in English. I'm not going to run that particular clip from you. But it is incumbent, now that we get done with those particular updates, to get to some of the rest of the situation here in the United States with the fallen U.S. troops as of so far here. As of 4 p.m. Eastern Time, March 2nd, CENTCOM, that's U.S. Central Command, reports that 6 U.S. service members have been killed in action. Quote, U.S. forces recently recovered the remains of 2 previously unaccounted for service members from a facility that was struck during Iran's initial attacks in the region. Major combat operations continue. The identities of the fallen are being withheld until 24 hours after the next of kin notification. Now, there is a clip of the President of the United States this morning commenting on the fallen U.S. troops. This is back when there were only 4 which were reported. Of course, CENTCOM points out why there were only 4 reported at the time. And the President says 3 things. Or I should say he communicates the respect for the fallen. He communicates the news about the fallen U.S. servicemen with 3 things: with reverence, with concise language, and with resolve and realism. The President of the United States on those who have so far been killed in the second Gulf War.
We're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon, never going to have a nuclear weapon. I said that from the beginning. They're never going to have a nuclear weapon. They were on the road to getting one legitimately through a deal that was signed foolishly by our country. And finally, we're ensuring that the Iranian regime cannot continue to arm, fund, and direct terrorist armies outside of their borders. And we thought we had a deal, but then they backed out. And they came back, and we thought we had a deal, and they backed out. I said, you can't deal with these people. You got to do it the right way. Today, we grieve for the 4 heroic American service members who have been killed in action and send our love and support to their families. In their memory, we continue this mission with ferocious, unyielding resolve to crush the threat this terrorist regime poses to the American people. And A threat indeed it is. We have the strongest and most powerful by far military in the world, and we will easily prevail. We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay, whatever it takes.
Now, one quick note here. The president also, in another statement about those who had fallen, pointed out, and this was roasted all over the social media sphere, he said, these things do happen. He said, this is going to be part of it. Those who have volunteered to serve in the United States military and go over to the Middle East, where they are stationed around our bases in the region, which those who serve are very, very well aware of, there are cases in which those might, in fact, come to severe harm and death. It is a terrible thing. They should be remembered in honor. Their families should be taken care of and prayed for. And we should do everything that we can to make sure that our troops are safe in the region. However, it is also important to carry with it a sense of realism, and that any foreign policy action, including staying here at home and doing nothing, does carry a substantial risk for the loss of life. And pretending otherwise, pretending that it's somehow awful for the president of the United States not to act surprised that there are those who did perish due to the attacks by Iran, as though that's somehow on the president of the United States directly. First of all, he is very well aware of the risks that are taken. And number two, it should be stated that the idea you can have any kind of a foreign policy without the risk of loss of life is incredibly naive, it is foolish, and it puts more individuals, both innocent and those who are serving in a military capacity, at great risk. So, furthermore, an Iranian drone has struck a hotel in Bahrain where a U.S. Department of Defense representative and attaché were staying. This is according to the Washington Post, citing the State Department. A couple of other key points in some of these particular strikes which have gotten through, as the Iranians have resorted to using cluster munitions. Essentially, the missile fires up into the air, and then as it is on its return trajectory down to the ground, the warhead then splits, and you see smaller cluster munitions strike, again, at random. Because, by the way, for those who are very seriously worried about international law, this would be a war crime. But alas, the particular updates on the damage so far: very minimal damage to the U.S. naval support in the U.S. 5th Fleet's Bahrain headquarters. A radar dome and some nearby facilities, a warehouse that we've already reported on, which has been hit. Limited structural damage and debris impacts, including a funny video, which we don't have time to get into, of a U.S. soldier watching his truck get hit by a piece of debris. In Qatar, Al Udeid. In the UAE, Al Dhafra. In Kuwait, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. Intercepted missiles and drones, which fragments still fly. Just because you intercept a missile doesn't mean that it evaporates, erased from existence. That's not always a thing that occurs. 11 people have been killed, including 9 civilians in Israel, in a missile strike on a synagogue in Beit Shemesh. 28 wounded and 11 missing. One man seriously injured by shrapnel from an Iranian missile in the Tel Aviv area. In Bahrain, one person, a Pakistani national, killed from Iranian counterattacks. In the United Arab Emirates, 3 people killed by Iranian missile and drone strikes targeting Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and other infrastructure, including airports and industrial sites. 1 killed in Kuwait. Of course, we'll get to the friendly fire situation here in a second. In Saudi Arabia, missile strikes targeting Riyadh. Very interesting decision by Iran, so much for just targeting U.S. infrastructure. In Qatar, targeted strikes on Doha, 16 injuries, but no deaths reported yet. In Jordan, 5 injuries, but no deaths or major infrastructure damage. In Oman, which supported Iran, 1 person has been killed and 5 injured from Iran throwing a missile there anyway. In Iraq, 2 killed, 5 injured so far in strikes from retaliation on U.S. positions. And then in Lebanon, Iran has succeeded in both killing Lebanese civilians and then also some of their own Hezbollah. Very interesting in that side. Radio crew, we're going to send you over to commercial and continue on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. Now, this brings us over to some of the friendly fire situation from today. So today, a couple of F-15s were downed, all of the pilots safe in Kuwait after some Kuwaiti air defense got a little excited. It's unclear as of yet whether this is a transponder issue or whether this was an issue in a lack of communication. Here's the clip of one of the jets falling down.
لا والله حربية طيارة حربية طيارة حربية شوف 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 شوف
in the port engine, the left engine. Then, of course, in a rather interesting clip, Kuwaitis running up to one of the pilots, asking if she is okay and thanking her for being here. Really, really incredible clip.
You're fine? Really? You need something to help you? No problem, you're safe. You're safe, you're safe. Everything good? No problem. Thank you for helping us. Everything perfect?
Just an incredible note. Again, the only people who seem to be deeply upset about this particular war are hyper-isolationists in the United States on the right, on the very far right, kind of the horseshoe to the left. And then the Democrats are wildly, wildly upset. Now, this brings us to some of the media and administration response. Because again, I tell you, we'll get to some of the other footage from the conflict in a minute. The administration and the media's response to it is very, very peculiar. Of course, the president of the United States has had quite a few addresses to the United States. There was a story running from Peter Baker at the New York Times suggesting the president of the United States didn't address the country. I remind you that on Saturday morning, the very first thing we ran with was the 3 a.m. video from the president of the United States announcing what had happened, who was involved, what the United States goals were, a message to the people of Iran, a message to the troops in the Middle East, a message to the American people, and then the classic presidential sign-off that was appropriate and necessary. Here was the president in an additional response today.
Today, the United States military continues to carry out large-scale combat operations in Iran to eliminate the grave threats posed to America by this terrible terrorist regime. Following our obliteration of Iran's nuclear program in Operation Midnight Hammer a short while ago, we warned Iran not to make any attempt to rebuild at a different location because they were unable to use the ones that we so powerfully blew up. But they ignored those warnings and refused to cease their pursuit of nuclear weapons. In addition, the regime's conventional ballistic missile program was growing rapidly and dramatically, and this posed a very clear, colossal threat to America and our forces stationed overseas.
Now, I'm working on a report at the moment discerning the different responses from the administration officials to the media and the United States and world at large on why the United States began this particular strike alongside Israel. Excuse me. So the President of the United States, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, they've all said slightly different things. But before we get to any of that, I'm just going to put you into a little bit of pain really quickly here. Here's The View, ladies, suggesting that this is all because of Epstein.
But I also have such anxiety. I am furious that we are going into war yet again without congressional approval.
Okay.
I am furious that the American people have not been brought into this. I am furious that we are doing this alone. Yes, Israel is part of.
It's going to be an interesting meltdown. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. We got to pick up the radio crew. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
So, different administration officials have somewhat different flavorings as to what they argue particular rationale for the strike on Iran is built on. Now, objectively, since the inception of the Iranian Republic, the regime under its Islamic leadership as we know it, the administration has very openly, directly, and by proxy been at war with the United States. In every single parliamentary leadership meeting, they chant for the death of the country. They have attempted and threatened additional attempts on the life of the President of the United States. They have killed hundreds and thousands of Americans directly or via proxy. This is irrefutable. It is objectively true. Regardless, right now what we are seeing are a lot of different attempts trying to paint this as a very, very deeply unpopular action in the United States and around the world when the evidence just isn't there for that. Two things from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. First of all, his response to the endless war argument.
This is not a so-called regime change war, but the regime sure did change, and the world is better off for it. The mission of Operation Epic Fury is laser focused. Destroy Iranian offensive missiles, destroy Iranian missile production, destroy their navy and other security infrastructure, and they will never have nuclear weapons. This is not Iraq. This is not endless. I was there for both.
He's correct. The idea that, here's another forever war, and I'm hearing this from everyone. Let me clarify. I'm not hearing this from everyone. I'm hearing this from some of the hosts who have been wrong about everything in the last couple of months. If I was to point at the scoreboard, a lot of the hosts who have made big claims that have been dead wrong have promised me we're going to see boots on the ground style warfare. We're not seeing that. We're seeing when people are asked that, we said, no, we have no plans for that right now at all. We're not going to tell you anything set in stone because that would be revealing all of our cards before the cards are played. But the best line from Hegseth, without a doubt, they wanted death to America and they instead received death from America. One of the top 10 statements from a Secretary of War in the history of this country.
Turns out the regime who chanted death to America and death to Israel was gifted death from America and death from Israel.
Survey says
this is not a so-called regime change war.
Now, I do want to bring forward Marco Rubio's response because this is getting a lot of the conversation. So we've heard a lot of announcements. We've heard a lot of criticisms. For example, again, we talked about Anna Navarro over on The View, who has said, he didn't notify Congress, is what Chris Murphy said. They didn't notify Congress. The president has to notify Congress before he does anything. You guys are more than welcome in the media ecosystem to be like the rest of us and read the present U.S. law regarding when the United States does and does not do things with the military. But alas, here's Marco Rubio answering about whether Congress was notified, who in Congress, and obviously why the United States didn't call all 535 together right beforehand. Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
Not notified Congress ahead of this, and does Congress...
Well, we did. We notified Congress. We notified the Gang of Eight. We notified congressional leadership. There's no law that requires us to do that. The law says we have to notify them 48 hours after beginning hostilities. We've done that. I think the notification went today. But we did notify members of Congress in advance. But we can't notify 535 members of Congress. Well, the Congress can vote on whatever they want, but there's no law that requires us to do that. And I want to say something because I see people on TV. Look, that's fine. If they want to take a war powers vote, they can do that. They've done that. They've done that a bunch of times. But people keep saying that there's no law that requires the president to have done anything with regards to this. To begin with, no presidential administration has ever accepted the War Powers Act as constitutional. Not Republican presidents, not Democratic presidents. That said, we have followed the notification at 48 hours, and we're here today. I've done more Gang of Eight briefings than I got in the 4 years that Biden was president and I was a member of the Gang of Eight. All of that said, we've complied with the law 100%.
He's correct. Objectively, I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, Socialist, whatever. The man's correct. Overtly. And I got a lot of grief from a particular Libertarian show host who I'm friendly with, who disagreed and said, the constitutionality of this is really awful. And again, the argument to be made here is, if you do not like the law, it is the same as immigration. Tom Homan has made the same case. If you as Congress, we're going to play Chris Murphy here in a minute, you don't like the law, then you go change the law. Here's Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, hitting the Sunday shows and suggesting doom and gloom is here and it's upon us because the president is awful and evil and stupid and we're all going to die. Here we go.
You have called for Congress to return to Washington and to vote on whether to try to essentially halt this military action. No war powers resolution has ever overcome a presidential veto. Why do you think you need to take one?
Well, nobody in this country is asking for war with Iran. Just like months ago, no one in this country was asking for war with Venezuela. This president is intentionally tanking our economy. He's the most corrupt president in the history of...
All right, I'm going to stop you right there, Chief, before you go on your little diatribe of why Donald Trump is written more times than any other name in your diary. So first of all, we're using the term war so willy-nilly all the time. People in the United States do not want long drawn-out wars, correct? But every major military action, especially in which Trump said, I'm going to bomb the out of them, and I'm going to shove a missile right up Al Khamenei's. Every time that happens, the American people go, yeah, I like that. When Maduro was captured, Americans overwhelmingly in support of it. It turns out that big military operations in which America expresses dominance, Gulf War, a great example of this. The Gulf War ended the Vietnam syndrome that the Americans had, because it was not our troops who lost the Vietnam War. It was not our military that lost the Vietnam War. It was the restrictions put on them by our government. Same thing. The who is in charge, just like with immigration, turns out to make a heck of a lot of difference to Americans here in the United States. Now, I do want to move on because I want enough time to cover some of the extra stuff here. The Marco Rubio answer, his reason, he said, for why the United States needed to strike Iran. This is receiving a lot of controversy right now. He gives a slightly different reason on first glance from what Hegseth and Trump said. Here you go.
The second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that...
Now, hang on. Just be clear when we get started here, because we're going to frame it from the ground up. He says, why now? Why do these strike now? Why do it starting at 1:15 a.m. Eastern Time, right before 9 a.m. in Tehran? Why do that? That's what he's going to answer. Why, the when, exactly.
If Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact, it bared to be true, because in fact, within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would...
Now, to be clear, that was number 3. He listed 2 things first, and then last he said, and also, Israel was moving forward at 9 a.m. Why? Because they had confirmation that Khamenei was going to be at home. Khamenei thought, it's Friday night, I'm going to go hide in my bunker, and then morning was starting to come, and so Khamenei thought, oh, well, they struck us in the middle of the night for Operation Midnight Hammer. That Sunday evening for us, we went live, did the whole shebang. Then Khamenei, going into this last Friday, thought, oh, hey, they didn't strike me tonight. I'll go back home and eat a little bit of breakfast here before we get to the Ramadan ding-dong good time, all right? Then Israel said, we're moving forward, we're doing it. And so the third reason the United States, who was already ready to strike, said, all right, fine, we'll do it, is if they strike in south and western Iran and not the rest of Iran is struck, that leaves a lot of missile firing apparatus that are left untouched. That leaves the Iranian Navy left to respond, perhaps to scuttle, to get out of there, to beat feet and go. So the United States decided, hey, let's do this all at once. Let's go forward. Let's move with it. A lot of the online critics, who are some of the dumbest people that I believe I have come into contact with, have argued that we have somehow, for example, Sagar and Jetty over from Breaking Points, a podcast that makes me want to shove scissors into my ears and then open them. He's like, I get it now. The war was preemptive in the sense that we had to preempt the Iranian reaction to Israel's preemption. There were 3 reasons that he listed. The United States, in reasons 1 and number 2, already stated why it was they were striking at that moment. It happened to coincide in the hour to half hour approach, not the different days and weeks approach. But alas, I know that some people struggle with very basic listening in English. I know we're giving them CDL, we're getting them semi-driver's licenses and CDLs. Radio crew, we're going to send you off to the commercial, and then we're going to dig into a couple more of the dumb things and some of the bigger Chinese implications. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, some of the media spheres bringing like J.D. Vance into this. Chuck Todd over on Chris Cillizza. Again, another guy who really believes that people are tuning into his riveting podcast at all times. Chuck Todd has decided to come out and announce that it was, Chuck Todd says J.D. Vance's aspirations are completely dead.
Yeah, I love hot takes.
J.D. Vance's presidential aspirations are dead. Dead.
That is a hot take.
Buried.
Okay, explain. I mean, I know what you're talking about. But...
From this.
Okay.
Recovering from this.
Because he is such a
vice president.
Right.
No, it's what happens. It's like what happened to Kamala Harris. Whatever identity J.D. Vance had going that was different from Donald Trump's is gone. And now you own everything he does.
Okay, so the point that he's trying to make is that Vance has no chance because what Trump is doing right here, right now, is incredibly unpopular. This is an expressly stupid decision to get on air and say this. The more Vance moves away from the hyper-isolationist perspective, the more that he moves away from that, the more popular he is. The more that he picks up from a little of the Trump pragmatism, there is a reason that when Secretary Rubio gets out and does things, it's very, very, very popular. Very, very, very popular. Vance has recognized this, by the way. And just like last time, he's actually used a little of this kind of hyper-isolationism to essentially obfuscate for the president and allow some last things to get in place. It has happened now 4 times in a row. Now, Jim Acosta and Alex Marquardt did the same nonsense, like the exact same story. I don't know where these people are getting these perspectives and running with them like they're deeply impressive. But alas, academic journalistic class has to make a living.
And you're a little gray around the edges too, which is my look too these days. But that's because of the world we're living in right now, Alex. I mean, it's nuts. But I mean, you've done a lot of on the ground reporting over the years in this region. And I'm just curious what you think, because, a lot of comparisons are being made between what's happening now and what took place when George W. Bush took the country to war in Iraq. Obviously, lots of differences. We could talk all day about that. But the way that this was very much, it seems to me, a war of choice, and maybe even more so than what took place with Iraq. And now the administration is sort of trying to backfill, the Trump administration, that is, with rationales and saying, well, there was a possibility that Iran could do this or have.
Oh my gosh, we're going to do this. We're going to play this game. No, we have been leading up to this for weeks, boys and girls. We have. Go look at any news show over the last month. Everyone pretending that history began yesterday. There was a comment suggesting that I invite on Aaron McIntyre over from The Blaze. He's been doing this nonsense too. Like, history began, just out of nowhere decided to attack Iran. Guys, we have been preparing for this for like 2 months. We've been talking about that they won't negotiate, they won't moderate. They're starting up their nuclear program again right after we bonded. Come on, guys. We have been looking at this for ages. They have tried to assassinate the president of the United States. They have encouraged attacks on U.S. shipping, on our allies' shipping, on India's shipping, for goodness sakes. And they have continued all of these affronts against the wills of not just Saudi Arabia and the UAE, but also Qatar, which is a wild series of decisions. And so you have media goofballs that get up and announce that all of a sudden they're thinking on the fly and they have no idea what they're doing. They never expected this. Guys, we have been at war in one way or another with Iran since 1979. The idea, and by the way, that's not me that's saying that. That is them saying that. Well, not a lot of them now, though some of those are dead. But the idea that we're going to have a lot of this, like we're just rewriting history, no, not going to fly with voters. It's not going to pass the mustard. Radio crew, we're going to head over to the commercial, pick them up one more time. Don't go anywhere. Tony Kinnett Cast. Let's talk a little bit about China.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
We go over to Rob Greenway. He's the director of the Allison Center for National Security at the Heritage Foundation. He's got quite a history himself, but we've got a lot to dig into, sir. Quite the security couple of days on the international stage, eh?
It has been. It's been a busy 6 months. The last 72 hours have been exceptionally busy and in a good way.
I think so. I got to get your take right off the top of the bat on the operational security going into Operation Epic Fury. It seemed there was a lot of obfuscation from the administration, far fewer leaks than we had ever seen. It seemed as though differing messages were going out to who might have suspected to have been leaks. What's your take on how things went up until the moment that the go was given?
Well, I think we've seen really remarkable OpSec from the second Trump administration overall, and commendable for any. Not just here, but also the 12-day war at Midnight Hammer, I think, was exceptional. And I'd also say the operation in Venezuela was also equally laudable. And in all cases, of course, you want to see us protect our interests and our service members. And so anytime I think we can preserve security, it allows us greater effectiveness on the ground. And certainly the initial hours of Epic Fury have been remarkably successful.
I think that's pretty on point. The logistics that's something the United States is known for in its expertise. It's something that we have always been great at, getting the fuel, getting the munitions to our boys, either behind the controller or, of course, on the stick inside the jets. There has been a bit of a concern, however, with the Kuwaiti air defense, perhaps shooting down a few of our own. Do you have any insight on that situation yet, or has that OpSec extended towards keeping the lips closed as to the situation surrounding those friendly fire incidents?
Well, I think it's too recent for the details to become available, but anytime you're working in a complex combined environment where you've got integrated air defenses of a dozen nations working closely and you're flying minute to minute air tasking order changes, these kinds of things are possible. Normally, they are mitigated by absolutely expert coordination. But again, when you're dealing with multiple nations and tight changing circumstances, these things can happen. Thankfully, the air crew have all apparently survived, and I suspect we'll be sending Kuwait a bill.
I'd say that's pretty accurate. This is one of the key questions that I wanted to ask you. This is something that is being glossed over, perhaps, because the United States and Israel have accomplished it multiple times in the last couple of years. How significant is it with the air defenses that were advertised in Iran 3 to 5 years ago for the United States to have established complete and total air dominance, air superiority over Tehran itself and the broader Iranian provinces and sectors?
Well, it's a tremendous achievement. And again, this was accomplished with the support and assistance of our close ally and partner, Israel, equipped by the United States. And it was done during the 12-day war. And I think that gave us confidence in this operation to know that we would be able to do so again. Now, in some cases, we were aware of the capabilities of Russian air defense systems and Iranian variants of it. There are a couple of new Chinese radars that I think we may have gone up against for the first time, but in all cases, nothing sufficient to be able to stop the United States. And now at this point, we can attack at will with any platform that we so choose, which vastly expands our capacity and capabilities, which means we're going to be able to diminish their retaliatory capability in short order.
Kind of a broader global perspective that I wanted to kick your way here near the end of our time together. China has been eyeing Taiwan for the entire time the Communist Party has been chasing those to that particular island. So looking at China now, obviously their air systems, us going up against perhaps some of their radar for the first time, questions as to whether or not we engaged with any of their particular tech in Venezuela. What do you think this changes, if anything, regarding China's posture towards China's posture towards military maneuvers against Taiwan or the South Pacific more broadly?
I think they've probably good cause for concern about the viability of their systems in both Venezuela and in Iran. But more importantly, I think they're concerned about President Trump's willingness to use force decisively. And I think that has an enormous deterrent factor. I also think that both operations in Iran and Venezuela point to a more strategic insight into President Trump's influence over global energy markets. And again, China is dependent upon external energy sources, including up to at least 14% from the Middle East and growing. And so our ability to influence that, to throttle it if necessary, not only affects China's economy potentially, but certainly its military, which is completely dependent upon oil and gas, as everyone is. So I think this strategically recognizes the most important objective here is to restrict China's ability to engage in mischief.
Can't help but ask one question on the end of that, because that mischief comes in the form, for example, of the Belt and Road Initiative. If China is struggling, this is my little hypothesis, I'll test it right out in front of you, sir. Please don't be too harsh on me. If China is hindered on its own fuel imports, and of course, the infrastructure that it's already struggling with in the construction sector, building things very poorly, having to rely on stolen IP, is it really going to be able, the Communist Party in China, is it going to be able to extend influence as strongly through the Belt and Road Initiative if it's experiencing perhaps more shortages at home due to the international moves of the Trump administration?
Well, I think it's a fair question. To the extent that we understand anything that goes on in China's economy, which is to a large extent opaque, I think we can infer a couple of things: that their system remains exogenic; it's dependent upon external inputs and resources in order for it to maintain or grow. I also think that they've got significant internal deficiencies, not just in the real estate sector, but broadly in the financial sector. And I don't think BRICS has been affected by any measure, or the Belt and Road Initiative in general. I think it's proved to be more advertising than substance. And it's probably cost the Chinese a great deal of funds and also credibility. And look, Iran, their partner and certainly supplier, was looking, I think, as they were to Russia for support and assistance when they're attacked by the U.S. and Israel, and twice they've been declined by both. So I think if you're looking at a partner in the global and international set, I think Russia and China have diminished their stature by not coming to the aid and assistance or providing capabilities that matter. And the United States and Israel have proven the opposite. And I think all of that's good for our brand.
There are reports coming in that Iran may have struck the U.S. embassy in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. Radio crew, however, we got to send you off to commercial, and we're going to update some of that stuff on the live stream. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal radio crew. You guys take care. All right, now we should be good on that side. Sorry, with the radio crew out of the way for the evening. There are still unconfirmed reports. There's a lot of footage suggesting that maybe there are multiple explosions near the U.S. embassy in Riyadh's diplomatic quarter. Apparently, fire trucks are on the way. I'm gonna level with you. Some of this footage so far, it looks like it's not real. There may, in fact, be strikes that are getting closer to the capital city, Saudi Arabia, Riyadh. However, so far, a lot of the footage just appears to be a fuel truck accident that was shown on social media like a month ago. Why do I bring that up right now? Be very, very careful. Be very, very careful about AI footage and claims that have been made. I mean, apparently, Benjamin Netanyahu's died like 8 times over the last day and a half. So all of those particular pieces of footage, there's claims being made from everyone. Tucker is making up stories that Mossad was actually the ones who were attacking Qatar, and oh my gosh, the stupidity. Oh, all right, on to the local home front, because we have some local news that is very, very important to tackle. In Texas, a horrible terror attack. An individual who is a naturalized citizen. He came into the country naturalized during the Obama administration. Just a terrible, terrible thing in and of itself. Before we even get to that here, I actually do want to pull up the photo of the individual. He was a naturalized citizen from Senegal and was wearing a sweatshirt that says property of Allah on it. And I mean, there you go. Well, I wonder what the motive could have been for this shooting. Underneath, he, according to police, appeared to be wearing a flag of the Iranian regime. On social media, it appears that he, when moving down through the 4600 block of Columbia Avenue in Dallas, these identities, at least by the police department, have not yet been fully released, pending confirmation by the Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office. This particular shooter, late Sunday night, pulled out a rifle, started shooting people in a bar in Dallas. Or excuse me, not in Dallas. Excuse me, I apologize. Austin, not Dallas. I very much apologize. I got the cities mixed up. I very much apologize. This particular individual, who, again, shot up 2 dead, 14 injured, also had a Quran in his car, some other information from the New York Post. Brandon Gill, representative of Texas, has now filed another bill which would prevent those from Islamic countries from gaining access to the United States, primarily. At least putting a pause on that right now. The first victim, a Texas Tech student, has been identified, although the rest are not at the moment. There was also a horrible stabbing in Edinburgh. This is the last known footage of that individual. There are several terror attacks and thwarted terror attacks that are at this point still too sketchy on some of the details for us to provide all of the information to you. Right now, Governor Greg Abbott of Texas has ordered that the entire state be placed on alert. The Department of Homeland Security has also put out a memo imploring the people of the United States to be very, very careful. Keep your head on a swivel. I recommend concealed carry at the moment, absolutely. So, again, excuse me. I didn't mean to mix up those particular cities in that instance. There is another piece of news that is also worth pointing out. The Supreme Court has granted an emergency appeal from religious parents seeking school disclosures about their kids' gender identity changes. We're monitoring that case. Of course, Elena Kagan is exceptionally angry at Thomas Gorsuch and Kavanaugh for suggesting that parents should be allowed to know if their child has a mental illness. You know, interesting stuff there. Also, another interesting report worth bringing you today on the news side of things. At least I can't really say not necessarily on the domestic side, although it is because we give it lots of money. Apparently, the United Nations is about completely bankrupt.
The Secretary General has, as you know, repeatedly made clear the problem both of non-payment of Jews by member states and the related problem of the UN being forced to repay member states for budget expenses that it does not budget money that it does not spend, so those two factors have put us on an unsustainable trajectory. Although more than 150 member states paid their dues last year, we ended 2025 with a record $1.56 billion in outstanding dues, which is more than double that of the previous year.
Cool. So go ahead and shut the UN off then. Defund it completely. Why is the United States donating money to this organization that does nothing whatsoever? Why? Why give money to the United Nations? There's no reason to do it. No reason at all. Now, again, moving to some of the other situations, there is also, there are a couple of bomb threats to discuss here. I was waiting a little bit to give some of the information and the updates on this. It's what you heard in some of the pauses. The Dallas Express, we're friendly with some of the folks on staff over there, report a bomb threat near a suburb of Dallas-Fort Worth.
Got some law enforcement presence here, as well as the fire department, Highland Village. Everyone is here just taking care of it. You can see them behind me handling some devices with a what appears to be a bomb squad truck. Again, this is incredibly concerning considering everything we've seen in retaliation to the Iran strikes.
Now, there is also a bomb threat that has been called in to the Trump Tower in New York. We're getting information on this right now. So we're trying as best we can to keep an eye on this. In Manhattan, the bomb squad has been deployed to Trump Tower in New York City after reports of a suspicious package. Again, just the unrest caused by fools.
Activities here. I don't know if they're going to close off Fifth Avenue. There is a possibility that could happen.
We'll keep an eye on that. Hopefully, that is a hoax. Now, back to some of the other international news. We're getting a couple of updates in. First of all, the United Nations has a couple of members who have finally decided to, kind of walk back and say, all right, fine. If the United States, if Israel, if Saudi Arabia, if Qatar, if the UAE, if Jordan, if Bahrain, if, again, nation after nation after nation, if everyone else except for Oman, France, and the UK, if those are the only outliers, maybe we'll finally start to, kind of get in on this. Now, even the United Kingdom has finally returned. So Keir Starmer came forward again and has now finally announced that the United Kingdom will be providing refueling and defensive weaponry and possible retaliation. Because, it turns out when Iran is throwing out missiles, willy and or nilly, that it's going to hit a lot of different targets, a lot of which Iran was probably not attempting to hit, but then would get on TV and said, yes, we meant to do that anyway. So Keir Starmer has now come around and said, no, actually, we are in this time, after initially coming out and announcing, please don't hurt me, we had nothing to do with this. Bizarre. Also, regarding Qatar, there has been, a strange series of rumors purported by a lot of the hyper-isolationist crews that the United States and its allies are running dangerously close to Patriot interceptor missiles. They're almost depleted. Apparently, we only had 2.5 boxes of them, and they're all already almost gone. No, the Qatari International Media Office has now released a statement and photos refuting claims made by Bloomberg that their stocks of Patriot intercepted missiles were nearing depletion, saying, quote, the inventory of Patriot interceptive missiles held by the Qatari Armed Forces has not been depleted, remains well stocked. The United States Central Command reinforced this claim and said, essentially, yeah, we have plenty. And to all of you out there in the wild ecosystem of the media sphere that believes that the United States is apparently destitute and has nothing, guys, we've been stockpiling Patriot interceptors in the Middle East since we've had them. Boxes and boxes and pallets upon pallets. We have them and to spare. And I'm not even talking about the LSAD systems. I'm not even talking about some of the defense systems that are now being not just field tested, but fully deployed. Showing that, if Iran wants to lob all of these various suicide drones, the United States has a lot of stuff to send over anyway. In fact, so many things, so many materiel that we have to send over to, for example, Iran, that we are also sending over our own version of the Iranian suicide drone. Our very own version of the Iranian suicide drone. So the LUCAS, the Lucas system, the low-cost unmanned combat attack system, we're sending so many of those over that one appears to have crashed in Iraq, and locals are giving it the once-over. Nice. So exciting stuff. There are munitions and to spare over in the Middle East. Now, additionally, and I do want to make this clear while we're skirting through some of this particular footage, there is not a single reason that I can see right now, this is kind of the analysis section here, that suggests the United States administration is reeling. There's a couple of suggestions from Iranian sources that Trump is begging for a ceasefire, that a bunch of U.S. bases have been destroyed and are burning. And again, in the era of independent journalists, in the era of people pulling out their phones, filming the base, holding up a newspaper or something with the current date on it, no, I'm afraid you're not just going to be able to get away with suggesting that, actually, the United States is just completely dead in the Middle East. The Trump administration has no idea what they're doing. Everyone's lost and concerned and confused, and everyone's terrified, and we're all going to die. No. Not at all true. By the way, just as a side note here, the United States has released some of the greatest photos from the Situation Room at Mar-a-Lago. President Trump, one of the few times that we've seen him without the tie. That's better than the second administration official photo right there. That's some stellar stuff from President Trump and the White House. Again, some other photos here. You see Susie Wiles, Secretary of State Marco Rubio in the Mar-a-Lago Situation Room. General Kane, Secretary of War Hegseth. Just from the perspective of one looking at all of these things, I'm not seeing the panic that I'm being told exists, not even in the general polling sphere, by the way. I'm not seeing everyone suggest that this is terrible and it's horrible. I'm not. Now, I will give a small update. Reuters do say that 2 new explosions have been heard in Riyadh's diplomatic quarter, but it is not confirmed that big, huge, violent fireballs, the embassy destroyed. Again, this is always the issue. Don't get out there and claim that you sunk the aircraft carrier. Guys, we're still communicating with the aircraft carrier. When someone comes onto TV from the deck of the aircraft carrier that supposedly Ayatollah Temporary sunk hours ago, and he's standing there chilling, and where you have U.S. sailors that are taking selfies from the deck of the aircraft carrier, I think the aircraft carrier is okay. If you say, oh, we've blown up the U.S. embassy in Riyadh, and right now there are journalists on the site who said, yeah, I mean, there were a couple of explosions heard earlier, but it's more likely that Iran smacked a front side of the gate, may have smacked a part of the road. Not clear. Even the apartment building, supposedly, that was struck in the southwest corner of the building, that was housing a State Department official, according to the Washington Post. The individuals inside only escaped with very, very minor injuries. I'm just going to level with you guys. I'm not seeing the complete and utter collapse. Now, again, there's a lot of rumor mongering online that I'm not going to go into detail with. Instead, I think better question here. A couple of really great mail time questions and super chats that I haven't had a chance to thank for have come in. I do want to take a chance and get a couple of these particular questions answered. So first of all, again, $5 super chat from Kevin Stankiewicz about our NATO ally Turkey, and whether or not he was going to come in and save the day and also join the United States in standing against Iran here. No. In fact, he addressed the world and said everyone needs to stop because if Iran is no longer around, everyone's going to take a closer look at me, and that makes me very uncomfortable.
Gayri hukuki saldırılarla bütün ilgili tutumumuzda.
I told you it wasn't in English earlier. You thought that he was like, what, he was suddenly going to start speaking English? No, absolutely not. Now, that brings us over to another very kind super chat. Again, asking if I was maybe going to bring on Orrin McIntyre. Probably not. He and I disagree on a lot, and he's also doing a lot of really, really silly things. Then Alicia, a nice super chat, $10, said, our president stated that thousands are currently calling for immunity. The only chuckle I've had all weekend. Who are they calling? So right now, there is at least a verified report out of not Reuters, but the Associated Press at the moment, suggesting that there are 8 provinces with defecting Revolutionary Guard Corps individuals. And they are asking for immunity. There are those who are trying to very, very desperately engage in diplomacy with the United States through private channels, probably through a country like Turkey, not through Qatar, because they're not talking right now. Doha's pretty pissed. So there are those that are trying to defect, but also it is, by the way, something here in the United States that we call bluffing. Absolutely, it makes sense because right now we are currently watching, at least kind of in the background, the Israelis in the United States flying sorties over to Iran and striking their media complexes and broadcasting instead messages from Israel, the United States, and Saudi Arabia to the people. So if the president of the United States is encouraging people to surrender, to shift things around, that is a very, very important part of the process. Now, this will bring us to the question here pretty soon. What do we do going forward? What are we actually going to see come out of Iran? That is, again, that's an important question here that we're going to cover, and I'm actually currently writing an article on that I want to make sure I get right. From Captain Sasquatch, $5, and said, Donald John Trump is the new John Wick. He took out 3 world leaders with a pen and effing pain. I mean, yeah, the president of the United States made this very clear during his first campaign in 2016. This brings me to Matt Walsh. I like Matt Walsh. We've had Matt Walsh on the show. He's a nice guy. As Timu Baptist Matt Walsh, as I have been called. Just to very briefly push back on a fence that he appears to be trying to ride. He said, quote, "I can't take the gaslighting, guys. I really can't. Conservatives are now running around saying Iran has been waging war on us for 47 years. He says, okay, well then why didn't any of you call for an attack on Iran at any point until now? Why didn't you make a case for Trump ending the war, not starting it, until precisely the moment when Trump did it?" So then he accuses people for latching on to a point, and every conservative influencer in the business, he says, was opposed to war with Iran until just now. No. This selective memory that goes on with influencers who want to be contrarian is really bothersome. I try to be very transparent with you. What I remember, what I bring up, the receipts that I have, I save all of the clips. All of the clips that we played on the show are downloaded and they are stored. They are not deleted because I bring them up again. The President of the United States, since 2016, has made it aggressively clear that he has no compunction at all with, and I quote, bombing the S out of other countries, whether they be the Islamic State or whether they be Iran. Bombing the S out of countries. He doesn't care. He's not going to do the Obama or the Bush maneuver or later on the Biden maneuver. This is Trump's opinion on this kind of stuff, all the way back in 2016.
They want to go after our civilians. They want to kill not only our civilians, all over the world. And it's going to be stopped. It's going to be stopped. Somebody criticized me the other day because they asked me what I do, and I said, I'm going to bomb the shit out of them. It's true. I don't care. I don't care. They've got to be stopped.
I mean, there you go. Have I ever not expressed support for throwing a missile up the rectum of the Ayatollah? What are we talking about here? Conservative influencers, academics, broadcasters, pundits, authors, politicians, they've been very clear on this. I don't want an eternal boots on the ground war. This brings us to another excellent mail time question that I do want to discuss here. So first of all, let's see, who is this particular question from? Oh, from Cindy Wolf. If we did not declare war, then what is this? Okay, boys, girls, and squirrels. There are a couple of different things that are happening at once. And everyone has just decided that anything involving the military means war in the way that we engaged in a war in the 18 and the 1900s. The early 1900s, I mean. When you would send them all in and you would go to conquer a country, and that was war. I'm going to let you in on not really a secret. Most of you know this very, very well because you've lived through it. After World War II, we really didn't do wars like that anymore. And the United States had far more success when it did things like the Gulf War. Again, by the way, just as a little side piece here, the United States has not operated with this, all right, guys, now they're not expecting it, before a joint session of Congress. I know that C-SPAN is filming and broadcasting this to the entire world, but, you know, we're gonna go do this strike that they're not expecting. Is everyone vote in favor of it? That's not a thing. It's not a favor. It's not a thing. And again, as one of the comments, again, a super chat points out, Ronald Reagan would say this is a proportional response. Yep. Again, Americans, what they do not want is a long boots on the ground occupation, nation building, kind-hearted, faux, compassionate conservatism war. That's what they don't want. The idea that we're going to go into these countries and teach people how to be good little boy. No, nope. We don't like the leader. They've caused pain to the United States. They've caused pain to the broader Western sphere. Hit them. That's it. The idea that we need permission for that? From who? The War Powers Resolution already made it perfectly clear. And again, the constitutional powers of the United States, for example, in the Barbary campaigns, started long before the President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, went before Congress and asked for permission. It's not a difficult concept. Was a question from TMB 2757. Was anyone injured with the drone strike on the Kuwaiti embassy? We're not quite sure the degree. I believe there was one injury, and it was not a United States official. Now, that said, I know playing semantics because we all want to say the term war as though it has some kind of extra gravitas. I'm not feeling the particular levels of sympathy here, I guess, that a lot of others are. From Rizal, Tony, what do you think of a source that says we had Mossad as doctor and dentists that put trackers in the bodies of these guys? I have no idea whatsoever. any of the sources. I know that 99% of the sources regarding Mossad and intelligence that make them out to be either diabolical or superheroes are really, really, really over-exaggerated. Now, again, intelligence services do some really cool stuff, but I would probably take it with a grain of salt. Maybe someday we'll find out on that one. I'm not entirely sure yet that I've heard that, at least for me. From Mark V11, Alexander was the last one to remove this many Persian leaders. I like that. This is one I wanted to get to. From Fenner27, how long till Iran basically surrenders? I don't think you are going to see Iran just surrender en masse. And they've already kind of screwed themselves out of issuing a whole country response. The Iranian regime has issued a core response to all of their provinces saying, you are now essentially red dawning it. You are now locally defending provinces as militias. We're not going to be able to send you any resources. We're not going to be able to send you any food. We're not going to be able to send you any water, any refined oil. We're not going to be able to send you reinforcements. Yo, you're on your own. And so therefore, what does that mean? That means that you're going to be able to take Iran piecemeal. Now, I'm writing an article about this right now. The new danger is, what do the people of Iran do? And I don't mean danger as in everyone needs to sit on their hands and be worried. No. It is a chance. The people of Iran have an opportunity. You have idiots, and I mean idiots, like Mike Pompeo, who are supporting some of the worst people on earth, a democratic group who is aggressively Marxist, who wants control of Iran. Then, of course, there's the Crown Prince. A lot of people want him to maybe be the guy. Again, he needs to actually go there and start doing things. It's going to be a question as to who arms them. I honestly would put even money on the pseudo-independent nation of Kurdistan breaking off in the meantime. I think that somehow you're going to get some Kurds. That would be my guess. I think you see provinces surrender and are taken. The IRGC is already stretched at the limit. They just also have all the guns. So someone's at some point going to drop a couple of guns, and, if we know our Middle Eastern history, probably a couple of Toyota Hiluxes in there. A waste of a couple of really great Toyota Hiluxes. Just hurts me deep down. But that's probably what's going to happen. Now, there's no timestamp on that. I don't know what the timestamp is. I really don't. I really, really, really don't. Now, again, I see the comments. I'm tempted to say, Pahlavi, the Crown Prince, is probably who we're leaning at, but I don't know. It would be kind of dumb for the Crown Prince to go in right now. I would say he's waiting. I'd also probably argue that the Trump administration, again, all speculation here, just to go ahead and put that out there as a disclaimer, I'd probably guess the Trump administration is talking to him. Pahlavi has certainly played Trump's ego in a way that's effective. He has spoken about Marco Rubio in a way that is also very effective. We'll see. I would guess they're probably just waiting for enough armament and movement to actually accomplish a couple of things. Expect Bay of Pigs, but with people who actually want to overthrow the government and enough support to do so. So, like the Bay of Pigs, if the United States actually would have done it correctly, and not ruined it for everyone. Even though, to be fair, JFK was put in a really rough position there. Ask not what your memory of the Bay of Pigs can do for you. Now, moving on, I think there was one other clip that I had promised you that I didn't have lined up at the time, but now we have the time to talk about. So, first of all, a little update on Tehran today, which is just burning. There's the capital city of the Iranian regime. All different kinds of strikes all over the place. It is not looking good. Iranian aligned militias in Iraq are releasing footage. Anytime you have a force that starts off their footage release, essentially with a bunch of really heavy music and CGI effects, it's going to be good. Okay. That's great. That's real special. So that's what the pro forces are doing right now, running a little short on resources. In Iran, the people themselves, we are seeing people cheering the death of Khomeini, refusing to go home, out in the streets. A lot of, again, praising the President of the United States, of the Israelis. There's one final thing I wanted to show you. I've waited until this moment. We were talking about the defense capabilities, counter drone, counter suicide drone, counter missile strikes. The Iron Beam. You have been told by the conspiracy theorists for ages of the Jewish space lasers that they control the weather with, and also somehow swapped out Selena Gomez with a body double. You've heard of this technology. Well, now it's here. The Iron Beam. You've heard of the Iron Dome. You now get ready for lasers. Really cool lasers. Except I'm not kidding. The Iron Beam, now finally out of weapon testing, full on unleashed. Look at this laser system. Striking some of the missiles coming into Israel. That's vaporizing them. That's not like scattering shrapnel. That is superheating some metal and plastic to a very high temperature. Now, the United States has smaller systems like this. Again, you keep hearing me refer to LSAD. LSAD is, again, a type of anti-drone and missile defense. It's the laser shield anti-drone system. I'm quite fond of it. I've had the pleasure of watching them in action and seeing how enjoyable it is to point this oversized Polaroid camera at things and fry them like bacon. It's exciting stuff. So the United States is in no way, shape, or form. Actually, to be honest, it is far more likely that the United States in this particular instance is testing out a few active program packages, probably from Hegseth's perspective. And so far, to again, some pretty neat things. Now, there is one other thing I want to point out. There is a group of Kuwaitis, which was on film today, locally confronting a different American pilot. And you can see them angrily confronting her. Check it out. Him, excuse me. So it's looking a little tense. People are surrounding the pilot. Things are a little tense until one clear distinction is made. He's like, I'm an American. Then everyone gets real friendly. Like, oh, sorry about that. Are you okay? I enjoy that. Now, again, there appears, I don't know why I would go into this, but just for fun. Again, as a few of the comments, the Gerald Ford's nowhere to be seen. It's probably sunk. Guys, the U.S. Navy just did an interview from the Gerald R. Ford an hour and 5 minutes ago. While we were on the air, an interview was done from a staff officer of the Gerald R. Ford. The name is on the bulkhead. Don't do this to yourselves. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't suddenly suspect that actually the Islamists are secretly hiding and their super duper weapon deep down. Guys, the Chinese and the Russians, they suck. Their air defenses, they suck. They've been humiliated. They've made fools out of. The United States is dominant. Pax Americana, manifest destiny. The United States. Incredible work. And also incredible work from Israel as well. So France, the UK, all of the goofball gay Europeans, best of luck to them. Nick Fuentes can whine. Goofball homosexual moron suggesting that it's time to vote for Democrats because Republicans have betrayed America. Yeah, okay. That's real special. Just as stupid as when I knew you and we got rid of you 10 years ago from the lone conservative. Moron. Don't listen to idiots. Don't listen to the panicking people. Go touch some grass. Laugh. Enjoy things. It's excellent. Everyone else, they want to throw themselves into an anxious terror. you let them. Go grab a milkshake. Have a nice evening. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. See you tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern. Take care.
I'm Matt Davis, CEO here at Maranatha Baptist University, and I'd like to invite you personally to Maranatha's 4th annual Leader to Leader Conference on March 5th and 6th here in Watertown, Wisconsin. This event, sponsored by our School of Business, offers 2 days of practical insights, valuable connections, and leadership development that will impact your career no matter your field. This year's conference includes keynotes from Ken Barbick, a Maranatha graduate and former Senate-confirmed Assistant Secretary of Agriculture, and currently serving as a senior lobbyist and advisor to Fortune 500 companies. My friend Tony Kinnett, another Maranatha grad who now serves as a national correspondent and syndicated radio host for the Daily Signal. And Adam Morgan, president of Majesty Music and a former member of South Carolina's legislature. Becoming a more intentional, effective leader starts here. Take the next step in your leadership journey and join us March 5th and 6th for 2 days of learning, networking, and growth that will set the tone for the rest of your year. To learn more, visit mbu.edu/leader-to-leader. Can't wait to see you here on Maranatha's beautiful campus March 5th and 6th for the 4th annual Leader to Leader Conference.